0.
Geek to me radio, da 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 da. Geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we have actor Adrian Hough joining us. We're going to talk X-Men 97. We're going to talk Assassin's Creed. We'll talk about Travelers a little because it's a great show as well. All that and more, plus we take your calls and questions. Please stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're out there driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight on this beautiful September evening, hello to all of you listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, the talk of St. Louis. If you're streaming us on YouTube and Facebook, hello to all of you who might be watching as well. And of course, as always, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form, we appreciate you finding us on whatever platform you're downloading this. And hopefully you've now subscribed and left us a nice 5-star review. That always helps us out in search engine optimization. So we appreciate all of our listeners everywhere, wherever you may be. And already in the chats, we have Amber Jones listening all the way from the UK. Hello, Amber. Chance listening from Atlanta, down in Georgia. Hello, Chance. The Nostalgic Pod Blast. He does a great show. If you're looking for podcasts to listen to, the Nostalgic Pod Blast is a great one. Hello to Shannon from right here in St. Louis. We have Lucas X listening to us. Hello there, Lucas. So I appreciate everyone listening. And to all of you out there in the greater St. Louis area tonight, hopefully you're winding down Sunday like my guest. He said he's enjoying a lazy Sunday himself in the Pacific Northwest. Please welcome to the show, Adrian Hough. Adrian, thanks for your time tonight.
Well, hey, nice to see you again, and nice to be here.
Great to have you. This has been you're the, I'm trying to remember, third X-Men member I've had. We had Lenore Zan on, and we had Matthew Watterson earlier in the year. So we're getting a nice mix of heroes and villains. I love it.
Where's Nightcrawler in that?
He's a hero, definitely a hero. One of my favorite X-Men, honestly. I grew up, I don't know if you've ever seen it. They used to have that giant arcade. It could play 6 people at once. It was the size of 2 arcade games, and Nightcrawler was one of the playable characters you could play.
Yeah, I think that was the second one, right? Because that was the one we did voices for. So I did the voice on that as well.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Yeah. That's doing the video games after having done the cartoon. I can imagine. I would think that's a no-brainer. Like, let's get the voice cast to do the thing. But I know not everyone made the. Did you have to re-audition for that, or did they kind of pick and choose?
Oh no! I mean, back in those days, I just got the call. I mean, video games weren't a thing, right? They were just starting up. You know, it was like Pong, Ms. Pac-Man, and then a few other things, and then that arcade game. So it was just a call, and then it was very strange because it was just a lot of grunting and like making noises as Nightcrawler in a German accent. But it wasn't until much later that video game acting became much more precise and demanding.
So is that one of your theatrical training? We need you to grunt in a German accent. Was that?
Well, all you need to do is turn on episode 7 of season 1 of X-Men 97, because that's what I did for the big fight scene.
And it was so cool. I mean, the animation was definitely, we talked about this with Matthew too. The animation leveled up, the story, the visuals, the cast. I love that they brought back a lot of the original cast members, even though some of them were in different roles. And I know some of them, their voice changed. Obviously, your voice remained the same for the past 20-something years. So kudos to you for that.
Well, it has more layers to it, but I kept the old layers as well.
Was that something like, I know people have been talking about wanting it to come back forever. Was that something that was on your radar before you got the call, or were you kind of thinking, well, if it happens, it happens, or what was your mindset?
Well, when I first did a convention about 11 years ago in Youmacon, the Youmacon convention in Detroit, Michigan, there was one Nightcrawler cosplayer who came by, and there was also Brad. Oh, what's Brad's last name? Who's X-Men Evolution Nightcrawler, and we were both there, so we took a picture together. And I realized, oh, this is still a thing. But back in the '90s, I basically worked 2 afternoons on this show. And, of course, it was my very first animated audition. I've told this story a lot. But, I just remember walking into the studio, and there's this guy with this sort of Robert Plant hair, and he's looking very disinterested behind the glass. And my agent had sent me in because the voice agent that she had started working with said, "Have you got anyone who can do a German accent? We just don't want Colonel Klink from Hogan's Heroes." So I went in and I saw the script, and I accents were my obsession, and I worked on various British accents when I lived there, and German was one of the ones, and I did a Norwegian accent for something. Anyway, so I saw the script, and I heard this voice of a person who had given me the German accent, and there was a likeness to it, and so I saw the script, and suddenly, I walked in front of the mic. Dan Hennessy, his name is. He looked up and go, "Yeah, go ahead whenever you're ready." And so I started. I don't remember what happened, but I just remember the sort of feeling of floating on the script, because it was such a good script and so kind of layered and fit what I had learned, and then coming to the end of it, people all over the world believe there is a God and all that stuff. And I finished it, and there's sort of silence in the room. I looked up, and Dan is looking at me intensely. He's going, "He's a very passionate guy, isn't he?" And I went, as if I'd brought something in that, and I was, "Yeah, do you want to do it again?" I went, "Sure." So I did a second take. And then the next thing I know, I'm sitting in the studio with Cal Dodd on my right, Lenore Zan on my left, and there was Norm Spencer, and I can't remember who else there was, and we were all just shooting that episode. And then they said, "Hey, do you want to play the Australian skier in the Alpine Lodge scene right at the beginning?" So I was also, but years later, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was trying to be up for this big animation that was recording that I wanted my agent to put me up for. And I just said, I was trying to find a hook. And I said, "Just tell him I was the Nightcrawler in the original X-Men animated series." And he goes, "Nobody cares about a 25-year-old cartoon."
Oh my
And
gosh.
I tell the story a lot, and poor guy, he's still my agent. He's a great agent. But it's just that one little thing. Like, we had no idea, right? We had no idea it was such a big hit. I mean, Lenore talks about, and Eric and Julia Lawal talk about there being like hallways full of fan mail for us that we just never saw and never knew about. And, so we were just working on a day-to-day basis. We were just a bunch of theater and film actors most of us, and who just happened to find our way through this show into voice acting.
Wow. Yeah, it's. I mean, X-Men obviously been around since the early '60s in comic form, and then I remember I've still got my VHS tape, Pride of the X-Men, that had Michael Bell and Neil Ross did some of the voices and things like that.
Yes.
Just I've been a fan ever since I was old enough to read comics of X-Men. So seeing it brought to life, and then when they finally did announce the comeback for the '97 series, that was like Christmas Day for all of us nerds out there. We were thrilled.
Yeah.
And I know you're up for a bunch of Emmys for this too. The series is nominated. So
it was yesterday, and we did not win.
Oh no,
we did not win. Blue-Eyed Samurai won, but of all the animated series out there, we got a nomination, and the whole team is incredible. So I mean, I've been nominated and not won awards before, so I take that as the win. I mean, the nomination is the win.
In our chats, Lucas X wants to know, have you read any of the Nightcrawler comics? And he's recommending the run that was a 4-issue limited series, I think is the one he's talking about, from Chris Claremont and Todd Newuck did the art. Did you, obviously, when you're doing the script, you're going off the script and you're given direction, so it's not like you need to be familiar, but on your own, did you, even after the fact, did you read the comic books? Did you develop a fondness for the character?
I am developing more of a fondness and a familiarity with the various lore and versions of the character, that because people keep on bringing them to me and telling me I haven't not sat down and read Nightcrawler comics yet. For me, I've just sort of approached it from the point of view of the acting and the scripts that I see in front of me, but I am gleaning a little bit from the various other versions of him. And one of the things I love about X-Men 97 is the first iteration that you heard from me of the Nightcrawler. He was very soulful and very quiet and always trying. And there's a kind of a I don't know, moroseness to him in some aspects, as well as sort of an aspiration. But the wonderful thing about episode 5, which was the episode which was nominated for the Emmy, is that he just blasts out of thin air. It's like, meine Freunde, and suddenly you see the playful version. And then later, a few episodes later, you see this swashbuckler version.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way that they've written him this way just allows me to play all over the place. And it's absolutely... it's a joy. Every time I think I'm just going to go in and go, look in your heart, hey, Logan, I get these scripts and I go, oh no, I've got there's some work to do here, some digging and play to be had.
Yeah, we had Eric and Julia Lewald on talking about their Lewald, talking about their work, and obviously they show ran the entire original series. And Larry Houston did so much of the great art. So when you guys are doing these panels now, like when I saw you at Phoenix Fan Fusion, you had several members of the cast there, and all your cues were just people waiting with their X-Men figures and their items. So I always love to ask the voice actors this: what's the weirdest thing someone's asked you to sign so far?
Oh gosh.
And we're not shaming anybody by any means. But
No.
People bring some really cool stuff.
I was at this event and a couple of people asked me to sign their T-shirts or jacket sleeves, and I find that a little bit odd. I mean, first of all, a T-shirt is really hard to write your name on, so there's some very strange, twisted scrawl on a T-shirt somewhere with my name on it. But I know that one of the other cast members was messaging me today because they were at a signing, and they said, well, somebody brought me in a Kurt toy to sign, and that's not even their character. So, and that's fine. Yeah.
So no body
Kurt
parts though.
What's that?
No one's asked you to sign body parts.
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm not inviting it, but not yet.
Right. No, I've seen people, like, they'll have the signature, like they'll do it with comic book artists, they'll do it with voice actors, they'll do it with live action, and then they'll go and get a tattoo written over the signature, so their signature is permanently on this person's, which I'm not brave enough to do that, but I think that's very interesting.
Yes. I don't know how I'd feel about that. Actually, I did. Someone brought to me, I was in Fairfax, I think it was, and someone came along and he had a Kurt tattoo on his waist. So he had a Nightcrawler tattoo, and I thought it was really super impressive. And there's someone else who's done taken that still of Rogue, Gambit, and Nightcrawler with the arms around, or the three of them together, and they've put that on a tattoo. So those are going around. So the art's out there. I mean, it's.
Like I said, it's a lot of love for the series, obviously, and I think it's just, and I love, you got more episodes in this current iteration than you did in the entire run of the last series. So I know you can't say anything about season 2, but I'm hoping we get even more Nightcrawler in season 2. You can't confirm or deny that, though, probably.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. I will say that it is in process. A lot of the voice stuff has been recorded for it, and hang on to your hats.
Okay, there we go. That's we'll leave
very
it
exciting.
there then. I want to remind you, too, if any of you have a question for Adrian about X-Men or any of his other roles, you can text us on the KTRS text lines at 84126. Standard messaging rates do apply. We'll try to keep an eye on those. Or if you're watching us right now, like Lucas or Chance or Amber or BK or MyFlock is in California listening. Hello, MyFlock. Great to see you in the chats. You can always type your question like Lucas did in the chats there, and we'll try to get to that during the course of the show as well. It's already 16 past the hour. I'm going to take a real quick break. We are going to do that, and we'll come right back. We're chatting more with Adrian, and we'll continue to chat as the hour goes on. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Then the attack chopper for support. You break through. You've won, and you've done it. Another great adventure with Superblocks. They work with Lego, too. Tyco Superblocks, Military Adventure Series, 10 building sets, each sold separately. New from Tyco.
It looks so golden. Holds up to 40 Star Wars action figures, like new Squid Head and Emperor's Royal Guard, each sold separately. And besides the new C-3PO collector's case, there's a new Chewbacca bandolier strap. Fits over your shoulder for play and holds 10 action figures securely. Like new Princess Leia Organic and Breeze, each sold separately. It even has pouches.
New C-3PO collector's case, Chewbacca bandolier strap, and action figures, each sold separately from Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
Now you can grab the thrill of driving real Porsche race cars with Tyco Radio Control. Or get behind the wheel of real Indy car racers with Tyco Radio Control. Cause you race them. You're at the controls of turbo Porsche race cars and turbo Indy cars. Scale speed up to 260 miles per hour. And when you need it most, you hit your turbo power to make the pass. Nothing else even comes close. Turbo Porsche racers and turbo Indy cars. Only from Tyco RC.
Hi, this is Matthew Waterson. I'm the voice of Magneto, Master of Magnetism in X-Men 97. And you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Matthew Waterson bringing us back from commercial break. If you missed our conversation with Matthew talking X-Men 97, you can always go back and find those on geektomeradio.com. Just click the interviews tab. You can go back, and they're all in there by the name of the person who's in the show. So you just look up Matthew Waterson. My interview with Lenore Zan, we've had her on a couple times as well, or anyone else you might be looking for, just take a look there, and you can go back. All of them are logged on geektomeradio.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe there, because you can also find all of the previous interviews archived on YouTube as well. Want to make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor. The reason this show is still on the airwaves here on KTRS is because of the folks at the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. The website, discoverstcharles.com. Today was a wonderful day. It was a high of 76 degrees here in St. Louis, which, September could go up to 95. It could be down in the 40s. We don't know. But today was a perfect fall day. And if you got a chance to get out and enjoy it, good for you. Hopefully you spent some of that time in St. Charles. Maybe you bike rode the Katy Trail, took the dog for a walk, or just went out and strolled the cobblestone streets of historic Main Street and that whole district there in St. Charles. A fantastic place to go, no matter what the weather's like. And, of course, they've got their Legends and Lanterns Festival coming up. If you're a Halloween fan like I am, you're going to want to check that out the last 3 weekends of October, all along Main Street. It gets taken over by ghouls and goblins. You can get axe-throwing lessons from Lizzie Borden. You can sing karaoke with Phantom of the Opera. You can talk to the angry villagers who are trying to shoo all these beasts out. You can interact with Edgar Allan Poe and the Brothers Grimm and Mary Shelley. All that is free. This is a free event, and it's a fantastic time to take the family out and visit historic Main Street. All this area is made up of small shops, small restaurants. They're locally owned, and it's never a better time to support small businesses than in the economy the way it is now. So make sure you go out and visit there, have lunch, grab a cocktail maybe while you're out there, and enjoy the beautiful historic setting. Start your trip at the website, discoverstcharles.com. Make sure you take their Hit the Bricks tour if you're unfamiliar with the area, or maybe you've been down there a while and you just don't know all there is to know. You go to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it's just $7. They take you up and down Main Street with a very knowledgeable guide. You can learn all about the history of the area, who slept where, what this house was used for. This building was originally a prison during the Civil War. Now it's a restaurant. Cool things like that. So if you're out of town, maybe you're like our friend Adrian, or you're here locally and just haven't been across the bridge lately, check them out. Start at the website, discoverstcharles.com. Again, discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Chatting with Adrian Hough all about his exciting career. One of the ones that was on your IMDb page that I'm fascinated by, they do these Lego movies, and you actually got to do Alan Grant in Jurassic Park. I'm curious, was the call put in like, hey, we think he can do a passable, Alan Grant, or did you audition for it? How did that come about?
Well, I usually, as with most of these things, I auditioned for it. I mean, Breakdown came out with several characters, and this one was one, and I just sort of Legoized Sam Neill a little bit and just kind of threw that down, and they seemed to like it. And next thing I was called in to do the episode. So I mean, that's how it happens. And there's a Dragon Prince, which is another voice I do. I play Saul Regem, who's a very, very bitter dragon, who terrible things happen to and because of. It's Dragon Prince. It's a lovely, lovely show. And it's not getting enough love. They did get a spot at New York Comic Con, where I will be as well, with a few of the other X-Men voice actors. Let's see, what else have I voiced well? Yeah, I mean, Alan Grant was a fun one. The Lego movies are fun. I mean, and they record most of them in Vancouver, which is not far from me, which is where I go to do most of it. So,
and you've played live action as many times you've done voice lately. It seems like you've done a great mix back and forth, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your background's in theater, live theater, where you get that immediate reaction from the crowd. Do you still do live theater when you can?
Well, I've raised 3 kids, and theater isn't a great medium for raising kids and paying mortgages and buying food and things like that.
Sure.
So I will occasionally do like I'm doing a little Christmas concert here on Vancouver Island, where I live, where I'm doing the a Child's Christmas in Wales. So I've been working on a little Welsh accent for that, and they have a choir singing in between the different verses of it. It's hard for me to do theater because it takes me away from the possibility of on camera work or voice work.
Yeah.
I just got a gig I can't tell you about. So I've had all these conventions scheduled, and so far they work out, but it means a lot of dancing around and getting on planes at the end of filming, and getting back on planes at the end of the con, and getting to film the next day, and not a lot of sleep. But I've got quite a fun little part coming up, and that I'm working on this month, that I can tell you absolutely nothing about because it's private. It's secret. On the 13th of September, I'm in a little Hallmark mystery that I show up in a Hallmark mystery as this character, Nigel Plummy. I have to look it up and see. I can't remember the title of it right now. But it's one of those little Hallmark mysteries, and it's a fun little comedy. And I don't get to do a lot of comedy. Mostly I'm playing kind of intense, rather somber, weird characters, or characters with accents, or broken down priests or doctors, or who are slightly evil, or who turn into, like in I was in Supernatural twice.
Yeah, twice.
And you see me first of all as this in the first season as this sort of very serious doctor who cares about his patients and sits by the bedside. But it turns out he's been soul sucking these children, and he's actually an ancient vampire of some kind. And then the next time was this sort of nice father-like character who's got this group of wayward kids that he's taken in. He's making waffles for them, but it turns out he's training to be vampire hunters. So I get to play those guys you think are nice, but not really, or you think are really bad, but it turns out there's a story behind it. I love those characters because they've got kind of layers and depth to them.
So you mentioned you don't get to do much comedy. Is that just the people kind of, like I said, you've done so many of those roles that you just mentioned, but you seem to really enjoy those roles. I'm assuming it's just the comedic roles. Do you just what would you attribute that to? Because
I have an expression to use. I don't know if I can use it on air, but it's basically resting S.O.B. face. So that when the camera hits my cheekbones and my dark eyes, it automatically goes, "Ooh, oh, he's scary." But I love doing comedy. I mean, I started my career, and I don't really, really young as a mime. So I was like really into physical comedy and doing like illusions and
really,
all that kind of stuff. So when I get a chance to kind of play in the kind of sandbox of funny stuff, it's always a joy, and it's very rare.
I did not realize that. That's a lot of physicality. Is that something you just naturally came back? Because not everyone has that natural physicality to do those kind of things. But
well, I was terrible at sports, like until the age of like about 11 or 12. I was the last kid picked on all the teams, and for a very good reason. I like if the baseball was bouncing toward me in center field, it would bounce over my glove and hit me in the head. That kind of thing. And then I had got involved in the summer this weekend arts program through the school board in Toronto, which is a city I was brought up in. And I think I was 11 to 12 years old. And I looked at this list of things, and there's like archaeology, geology, science club. And I was like, none of those. And then I saw this creative drama and mime. And I thought, that sounds interesting. And it was just kind of like an instinctive pull towards it. And so the first thing we did would be learn like how to do the wall. And suddenly my brain went, this is magic. I could, and so I would spend the entire class away in the corner practicing the illusions. So by the end of the class, I was good at the mime, not so good at the other stuff. And it was many, many years later that I finally decided I was going to open my mouth and speak as an actor. And that was when I started doing various amateur theater things in Toronto. And then I saw some British actors that inspired the heck out of me. And I thought, that's what I want to be. So I picked myself up out of Toronto. I went to New York, auditioned for the British drama schools there. I got accepted to 2 of them. And then I went to this one in West London, and it was a 1-year course. And then I stayed on in London for another 10 years after that, just like banging my head against the wall, trying to sound like I was English, which I eventually did. But it never, my career never really kind of took off, not until much later. And people say, well, how do you have this amazing career? And I go, well, it was just always looking forwards and what's next? What do I want to do next? What's available to me next? And then at one point you stop and people say, look at all these things you've done. And you have to kind of look back and go, oh yeah, I guess I did. That's how, that's my experience of it anyway.
So acting was that something then, because you mentioned the camp and everything like that, it wasn't something you instinctively knew growing up, I want to be an actor, I want to be on stage, I want to be on film and on camera. It was something you kind of stumbled into then?
It's stumbled into the thing which is that thing which presses the button in you, which makes you realize this is your calling. And I think depending on what you believe in, I think sometimes we are not guided, but like we fall into that thing. If we feel a calling, which, I don't want to make it too precious, but when you feel that call to perform, then and it won't let go. You can't turn away. I mean, I've done many jobs along the way, which aren't acting. I've worked in cafeterias. I've driven people around in fancy cars. I used to sign stiffs into a graveyard in West London for a while.
Wow.
I mean, I've done a lot of, washing dishes in restaurants. I was never a waiter. Once a bartender.
See?
Wasn't very good at those
things. You beat that stereotype, so at least
at least beat that one. But they're signing great, So what was the question? I'm talking myself into a circle here.
We were just talking about if you knew early on at a young age that that was something you wanted to be, or like I said, you said you kind of hit that thing that opened it up and you like, yes, that was kind of your
Yeah.
aha moment.
Yes. And then it's a question of hearing all the no that you are bound to hear as an actor.
Right.
You know, like you have the call and then you get the nerves hit and then you get the no, which confirms the nerves, which are telling you, oh, those little, oh, you know, you're not really good enough yet. You're not really good enough yet. But see, I took that not really good enough and I said, well, I'm going to get better at this. And so eventually I figured out how to focus my energy on just being good, you know, like how do I make myself good? Like watching great performances and go and setting bars for myself. And then it's just luck, you know, it's just luck. You know, you decide what kind of actor you want to be. You work yourself to be that. I was never going to be a Tom Cruise. I was never going to be like an Alan Alda. I wanted to be one of those actors who could transform. And so what I would do is I would walk into auditions in the accent and the thing for the various small little roles I play, or in the energy of the character. And then people think I'm that. And then the next one I say, I'm a bit Cockney in this one, so I'm going to be a bit different. And now as I get older, I can play these guys who are kind of like, you know, like Doc in Riverdale, you know, that's a fun one, you know. And then you can go, then it's like fun for me to try and do different things. And then coming back to the Nightcrawler going, yes, I remember, where is that? It's somewhere in there. Where is it?
He's in there somewhere.
And and it was in there. And we all had to audition for our roles again in X-Men.
Really?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Well, because, you know, as you mentioned, some of our voices have changed and developed different things. And, you know, some of the casting is more appropriate now, like in terms of, you know, characters like Jubilee and, you know, and Allison. Allison is playing, what's the character's name? Not Larissa.
No,
anyway,
Val Cooper?
No, that's Catherine Disher.
Catherine Disher's playing that role. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, like a lot of those people are coming back to do other characters, which is super fun. And it's, you know, meeting everybody at the cons that I haven't seen in 25 and 30 years has been phenomenal. It's just like old home week, you know. And of course, then we all talk about Norm Spencer, who sadly passed a year or so ago. And, you know, David Hemblin, who is the original, or who's the Magneto in the TAS series. And
the
Matthew
Apocalypse too. John,
what's that?
the gentleman who played Apocalypse, was it? Not John Colicos. I'm trying to think of the name. But anyway, so yeah, there was another one that we lost, unfortunately, too. It's like, oh man. So, but I will say the new Cyclops hit the ground running, and he did a great job.
Oh yeah, Ray Chase.
Yeah,
Ray Chase.
But
he does a great bit about like just going and listening to all the times that the character says Gene, and that's his warm up to get into character.
That's all you need. That one word. But with all the different accents, and you mentioned coming in kind of in the energy and style of the character, what you're describing, you're not really. It's not method acting, but what would you call that kind of process?
I don't know. It's the one that feels like swimming to me. That's the one that feels like I will do anything. Like physical things really help me. Mm-hmm. You know, like I remember there's a character I played in The Killing, and he was this very creepy dude. And I had sort of long hair at the time, and I didn't brush it that day. And I wore this big old cardigan that kind of gave me the feeling. And I softened my voice, and I made my tone a little bit slower and more breathy. And then just before I went into the room, because those days we still went into rooms and met people, I just slid my shoes off. So I walked into the audition, and it allowed me to focus not on, I got to get this job, I got to do all this, and more on just, this is what I'm presenting you. You know, because a lot of going into the rooms, we all get nerves. I had the worst nerves for like decades of my life, and I've had to develop skills to kind of work through them without without trying to suppress the nerves, because that's energy. And as soon as you try and suppress the nerves, I shouldn't be nervous. The nerves find a way to like, and then sabotage in the middle of the audition. Suddenly your voice is, and you can't remember lines. So the trick I use is I try and think of more things than whether or not I get the part. Okay, I want to, I give myself goals for each audition, and I want to try this kind of character, and I want to hit this beat and that beat and that beat. And I made that more important than the result of getting the part and getting to be on set.
That's interesting.
Well, at least it gives you a shot. And then, of course, if you do or don't get it, then you've done your job, which is to kind of present the character, present what you will do with it. And then they can go, well, he's too tall, too short, too old, too young, too pretty, too ugly, all that stuff. Or, too British, too American, whatever. So, and then sometimes your number comes up. So.
Have you found doing that you've gone in for a role and you didn't get that role, but they said, but you know what? You're really good for something else. I can see that happening with what you're describing. Has that happened very often?
It has. It's happened a few times. I can tell there's a show called Sanctuary, and I think it's on YouTube now. And I went in for one episode, and I knew the producer, Amanda Tapping, and I sort of went in there, and it's a very emotional cop part who's being choked by this monster. It's a sci-fi monster kind of series. And I just let it all out in the room, and it's just it's like absolutely not so grieving, tears bursting out of my mouth, out of my eyes. And I thought, well, that was either completely ridiculous or it was great. I don't know, but I let it go. And then I didn't get that one, but then I got a call for this next episode, and Amanda came up to me at that episode and said, we were saving you for this one.
Oh,
did a great no, actually the guy who directed that episode was a cameraman on the show, and he came up to me and he said, man, I was trying to get you for that part. You just made just so great, but Amanda said we got to save him for this other one. So that happens, and sometimes it turns out better, and it was the other role was very different and very fun.
Again, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking with Adrian Hough, star of X-Men 97, Assassin's Creed, Travelers, which is another one I want to get to because I loved that show. And I do want to mention real quick, because I always tend to neglect the chats, but we had 2 or 3 people. As soon as you mentioned Dragon Prince, Adrian, they lit up. They said, we love Trisha Sauer says, love Dragon Prince. Shannon says, my daughter just perked up as soon as she heard Dragon Prince. So there is a lot of love for that series, which I'm glad to see. Because it's again, it's one of those. There's a lot of those series out there that I feel like there's a fire hose of content, and it's almost impossible, especially for someone like me who tries to watch as much as I can to keep up with all the stuff that's out there. But thank you to all you in the chats who did mention your love for Dragon Prince. We do appreciate that. We're gonna take another quick commercial break. We are chatting, as I said, with Adrian Hough. If you're tuning in right now, stay with us. We'll come back and talk more. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
You don't dare back off even when you want to most, because winning off-road takes skill and guts, especially when it's Racing Hoppers. Racing Hoppers Electric Racing, new from Tyco, of course. This is the world of outlaws. Turbo Outlaws, radio-controlled machines, the most awesome, open-wheel, action-packed, dirt racing monsters ever built, with outlaw moves and outlaw skill from Tyco RC. Just hit the turbo trigger for turbo power and lead into the draw, because there's a little outlaw in all of us. Radio-controlled Turbo Outlaws, only from Tyco RC.
You can do it, Upsy, baby. She's getting a ball by herself.
Quick, get the camera.
I knew you could do it.
How did she do that?
Just pull the string, press the button.
Upsy baby starting to stand. She gets up by herself now. She looks so proud. Let's give her a hand.
That's my baby.
Bossy Baby, the doll that stands up. She's new.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, of course, wanting to tell you right now about our comic book sponsor, our official comic book sponsor. If you want to get Batman comics, if you want to grab some of the X-Men comics, they have an X-Men 97 comic series that's out from Marvel Comics right now. If you want to keep up with that, may I recommend Bugs Comics and Games. You can get to them from Highway 70 or from Highway 364. They're on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. Great place to go for all your comic book needs, whether you're wanting new issues, back issues, whether you want some supplies, maybe you need to rebag and board your comics. If you've had them in their bags and boards for a while, you want to swap those out, go talk to Larry at Bugs Comics and Games. He's been doing comic books since I was in high school. I'd ride my bike up to his store before I had my license to drive, and he took some time off. He taught college and taught theater, and he's come back to do comics, much like X-Men 97 has come back. So it's everything old is new again, and I love it. So if you're wanting to catch up with some of these comics, check out Bugs Comics and Games. You can follow them on Facebook and on Instagram as well. Bugs Comics and Games. Give their Facebook page a like. And if you follow them on Instagram, maybe your local comic book store closed down, which unfortunately has happened to a lot of comic book stores, the brick and mortars. You can make Bugs Comics and Games your brand new comic book store. He puts stuff up on Instagram. If you see something you like, you put claim. He sends you a PayPal invoice. You pay it, and then he ships the comics securely and safely right to your door. I always say it's not a comic book store if you don't have back issues, and he's always buying collections. So maybe you've come to that point in your life where you're like, you know what? I've enjoyed these. I want to get rid of them. Give Larry a call at Bugs Comics and Games, and he'll make sure you get a very, very fair price for your collection. And then I'll have new back issues to browse the next time I go in. So it's a little selfish of me to say it, but you know, it is what it is. Check them out, Bugs Comics and Games. Very proud to have them as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. Chatting with Adrian Hough about his career. Assassin's Creed was huge, big thing, and it shows no signs of stopping. When you're doing the mocap and everything else, I know some people, like we just played Kevin Conroy. He very famously said the video games are fun, but doing them can sometimes feel like having your teeth drilled, because it's like, okay, now say it again, but with a wry smile. Okay, now do it this way. Did you enjoy doing Assassin's Creed in the video games?
All of Assassin's Creed 3 was what we call performance capture, which is basically you have the helmet on your head with a camera, which is about this big. It's about that big, and so you can't really see beyond it. And your head is being gripped by this helmet, and you've got this set of tights on, and you've got a taped off space. But I mean, when I auditioned for that, it was a mini series shooting in Montreal, top secret, and I went, oh, okay. This is a British character. I know how to do those. And so I did an audition. And then a week or so later, I got this call saying, oh, you've got a call back for that mini series shooting in Montreal. And I went, oh. And I thought, this is a lead character. This is a main character. Why aren't they getting like Jeremy Irons or Julian Sands or somebody? And I thought, this is very. And so then my mind went, wait a minute. They're calling me back. And then they gave me this huge speech to learn the night before. And I realized, okay, if they're calling me back, then I'm not going to bunt. You know what I mean? I'm going to learn and the speech was long. I think it was the whole, we had a dream, Benjamin speech, which is intense and emotional, and he's out of his mind. Most of the time, he's very cool. And so I learned the whole thing again, and I walked into the room, and I'd looked them up, the two guys who were supposed to be the producers, and I didn't see anything on them on the Internet Movie Database. And I thought, this is very suspect. But here it is. And I just remember, like, I was at the end of that speech, which was the last thing I did, I was just kind of shaking. I'd left it all in the room, on the floor. There's bits of me all over the place. And I sort of look up, and they were like, we want to hire you. And I went, okay. Do you know what this is? A miniseries shooting in Montreal? And they say, come here. And in front of them on this table is like, I don't know, 11-page document. And by page 4, you've signed away your rights to your left kidney and your firstborn child. It's an NDA. And so I signed it, and they look at me. And now, just to preface this, I was not a gamer. Okay. You know, I'm of a certain generation. It was not a thing. And they go, it's Assassin's Creed 3. And they look at me in this way. And I go, okay, it's a video game. And I was like so nonplussed, and this is the bizarreness of having just done this big audition and then having been getting the part in the room. It was so like my mind was not, my mind did not see the size of it. All I knew is that when I did start to go in to record it, that I was going to make this, I was going to shoot this and practice this and record it like I was on screen. I was on a set, and that's actually the experience of it, except it's all in your imagination. Now they can, I was talking to Roger Clark at the last convention I was at, and now apparently you can actually see your character move as you move.
Oh, wow.
But in those days, you were just like stick figures. And the other thing about it is that they had to hire 2 people, because out of the back of this helmet, which was gathering all your face information and your voice, there are these like gigantic cords all stuck together. And they had to have guys wandering around behind us as we moved around the volume, holding these things up and not making sure they didn't cross and trip us up and things. But by the end of the recording, the technology had advanced so that it was all kind of Wi-Fi. And so we were just like walking around with these Wi-Fi helmets. But it was an amazing experience, just in terms of the acting itself, and who, you know, working with Noah Watts, who plays the Connor part and in it, who is the basic lead, the guy you think you're going to play. And I just remember that moment when the game was released, when for a year and a half, this top secret part, which was just mine, and the experience of recording it was mine and ours, and it belonged, and nobody knew the name of the character. And suddenly, like within a day, there was like 20 Haytham Kenway Facebook profiles and Twitter profiles, and people were started writing fan fiction about it, and the reaction when you find out that he's a Templar, he's not an assassin, and that was and I suddenly realized this doesn't belong to me anymore. You know, and it was just it was my first experience after like 30 years of doing this, of having something that became that kind of big and out there and belonging to the internet.
Wow.
You know, it was amazing. But I mean, I loved the character. I loved playing him, and you know, I loved playing opposite the actors like, you know, Neil and Noah and Genya Dio Horn, who's an incredible Indigenous actor. You may see her as Deer Woman in Reservation Dogs. She's fantastic. And she came in, and she got made sure that the Mohawk spoken in the game was real Mohawk.
Oh, wow.
She got one of her aunts and uncles. Who's got her aunts and uncles to come in and translate and actually make the language work in terms of the story in the game. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, she's an incredible actress. She's about 6'1", which is my height, and just takes no prisoners. And so working with her was kind of a little intimidating, but also she's so good, and she's such a fantastic human that you know, eventually I kind of, okay, no, this is just her kind of presence and take no crap kind of personality. Yeah. And you do watch Reservation Dogs, though. It's a fun show, and you know, represents you know, Indigenous creators and actors, which and she's fantastic in it as Deer Woman.
I just made a note. I'll make sure, because we're always looking for something new to watch. And which leads me to another question I wanted to ask you about, because my wife and I, as we sit down, we were like, what do you want to watch? We'll kind of go through the streaming services, try to pick something. And it was probably just pre-pandemic or during the pandemic. Everything's very wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey since 2020. But we found a little show called Travelers. And I believe this was your second time working with Eric McCormick if I remember correctly.
It was.
But
It was, yeah.
Loved that show. Talk a little bit about your experience working, because that seemed like such a great cast, and the stories were so well thought out. Talk a little bit about your experience working on Travelers, if you could.
Well, I mean, I basically worked for a couple of days on it. I mean, the parts is a creepy dude, and it was this, and it was fun to do because of that. He's got like buried bodies in the basement kind of guy, and because like I present like this, I'm a nice guy, I'm a dad and all this kind of stuff. For me, like every now and then, I like to go to sort of play somebody that I wouldn't think of myself as. So,
Right.
But I mean, Eric is great. I mean, since we first worked together to now, I mean, he's had this incredible career and explosion of Will and Grace. And Travelers is a fun show. I love the way it plays with time and the way it plays with like possible histories and possible timelines and how relationships work into that. But it was great to see Eric again. I said, I don't know if you remember this, Eric, but 25, he said, Top Cops. And I went, yeah, you were the cop and I was the drug addict. Yeah. But yeah, we knew each other a little bit in Toronto in the early mid-90s. And then, of course, he went to Los Angeles and he had that career. So, I mean, I love work. I love the show Travelers. Like I watch it. And
it was so good.
And I love working. Yeah.
Are you able to, obviously, because I've talked to different actors and they view the different shows and everything like that. Are you someone who's able to watch yourself? Like you go back and watch the episodes? Because some actors, once they do the scenes, they don't ever go back and watch it again because they don't want to. But then some of them like to kind of see it. And then some of them just, passively, oh yeah, it's on. I remember I was in this. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
I fall all over the place on that spectrum. There's some things I want to go, I wonder which take they used. And I'll watch it for that. And other times people go, why didn't you tell me your show was on tomorrow night or last night? And I was like, well, was it? I don't know. But I will see, the trouble is that if I watch myself, I can watch myself one day and go, yeah, it's okay. And another day and go, oh my God, I can't believe that came out. Oh no. So and then I started realizing that I have no real objectivity about it. Although when I was doing Assassin's Creed, because we were just acting in a volume and you're creating the scene as actors. And when you're working on a film set, you say, oh, the camera's here. So this is a 2-shot and we're playing it. So you have a vague awareness of the camera, or at least I do. But then Assassin's Creed, the camera in a performance capture volume could be anywhere. So it could be way over there looking at a faraway shot, or it could be right over your shoulder, or it could be right close. And so I realized that by adjusting my performance, and this is a terrible brag, but I remember feeling quite confident, having worked on it for weeks and weeks, and thinking there's a rooftop scene between the two of us where I have this big long speech, and it goes, Father, what do you Templars want? And he goes, order, purpose, direction, no more than that. And I thought, I think this starts with my character looking over from the rooftop down there, and he's behind me. So I started the scene not facing him, but there. And I think it's going to be like an over me to him. And then it's going to be a close up on him. And then I'm going to turn around and it's going to be over him to me. And I started working out the shots in my head that I thought it would be fun to have in the scene. And so I did go back and look at that, the cut scenes, and just to see if I was right, if it worked. And lo and behold, it made me realize that actors actually have a lot of power in video game storytelling. I mean, I'm sure the directors are more kind of film savvy now, but in those days they were mostly like working out the general scene so that they would cut in to do all the camera angles later. So we wouldn't have camera, like you can't see the cameras here and here, and this is how you play the scene. You just have to play the scene, and then they're going to decide later where the cameras go. Huh. So I mean, in that sense, I did watch my work, but mostly because, I mean, I'm fascinated by the process of acting. And if I see something that I want to learn how to do, I'll try it. So just on that level, I'll watch myself. But there's too many ways of getting outside of your own head or getting into your own head and being, messed up by either, oh, I'm great, or oh, I'm terrible. And both of those voices are lies, right? The important thing is you do your work as an actor and you put it out there. Watch it or don't watch it. I have no preference. But I forget. I like, if you ask me what I've done, I could name you about 5 things and I've forgotten the rest. I'd have to be reminded. So, I don't know if that's an answer.
No, that's a great answer. And it's always, like I said, people always fall everywhere on the spectrum, because I know, like I said, some people, I want to go back and watch it. So especially if it's a recurring episodic TV series, they want to kind of remind themselves, refresh themselves, and come back kind of knowing what they did. Other people just, no, I don't care. That was out there and done. I'm going to go on the script that's on the next. So I'm always curious about the process, and each person has their own process. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're doing is working, because,
Maybe. I guess I'm still doing it. It is fun to watch the X-Men thing, because we do pre-lay animation. We like go into the studio and we see this, like, to get little brief action descriptions, and then we see the lines. So we basically only get the episodes we appear in. And so now you go in and go, so that first scene was, oh, you America, the episode 5 is like, meine Freunde, oh, you Americans, so theatrical, I blame soap operas. I'm going, okay. And then Meredith, the voice director, goes, no. Hey, listen, this is what's happening, Adrian. He's bamfing in and out of this scene. So give us that. And so literally the next take was like, aha, I like click. I mean, she's a fantastic voice director. Like, she just says just the right thing to put you into the frame that they're animating. And so when I got to see it afterwards, I went, oh, wow, they made it work around what I did, and they made what I did work. And I mean, the other piece was when the big sword fight thing with Wolverine. And that was the first thing that I ever saw from the studio, because I'd already recorded it and then had to come back to do ADR on it, which is where you additional dialogue recording for all the grunts that we were talking about earlier, like the aha, meine Freunde, like all that, the grunt fight stuff, and the hitting the wall and going, all that stuff. And then, so I just saw those little bits for those little sound effects, and I went, oh, there's the character. There he is. And then they said, through the Zoom screen, they said, have you not seen any of the animation? And I went, no. And they were like, looked at each other. Would you like to? And I went, yes.
Seeing the animation, especially, I'm sure that kind of informs your overall performance. We've got literally about 35 seconds left before my outro music is going to start to play. This hour has flown by.
Wow.
Tell people where they can find you if they want to keep up with you online, social media handles, things like that.
Okay. I'm on Instagram, mostly Real Adrian Hough. On Instagram, and I'm on Twitter at ADEY80. Don't ask me why that's my handle, and I'm there occasionally. AD80.
Perfect.
And Real Adrian Hough. And those are the only two I really really use. And I've got a bunch of conventions coming up, which I'll post about.
Yeah, and
I'm going to be at New York Comic Con for a couple of days.
Yeah, so we're going to, and anything we can do to help promote those conventions, everything like that, we will do just that. Adrian Hough, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. There he goes. We'll make sure we tell you, because we promised you a convention announcement of our own. We've got the Two Rivers Comic Con coming up in May. Maria Canals Barrera, the voice of Hawkgirl, Wizards of Waverly Place. She's done a bunch of stuff, and she will be one of the newest. You're hearing it here before it gets announced on social media. She'll be joining us at Two Rivers Comic Con, along with Green Lantern Phil Lamar and Wonder Woman herself, Susan Eisenberg. Make sure you follow Two Rivers Comic Con for more information about the announcements and the guests and the artists we'll be having there. Thank you, as always, to the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thank you to Bugs Comics and Games for sponsoring this. And thank you to Joey V, just so Adrian doesn't think I'm crazy. There's Joey V right there, sitting across the table from me, making the show sound and look as good as it does. Thank you to our guest, Adrian Hough. Thank you to all of you in the chats. I know I missed some of you. Dale Huang, hopefully we answered your question. Trisha, our friend Christian Basil in Florida, so we're bi-coastal already. Thank you to all of you, and until next week, my friends.
This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Westchester, New York. Good night.